Scott
There-
Stevenson.
There you go. You guys were muted.
Sorry, Julie Reynolds,
Yeah, here.
absent, and Scott Randall.
Present.
All right, we got a quorum. So the next project is the Pledge of Allegiance, and could I call upon you to help lead us? I think the flag is behind me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Unless my eyes are deceiving us, looks like we have a new flag.
Oh, well, I'm not sure.
Well, it's pretty spiffy. It looked good on this day to have it there. All right. Have you had an opportunity, members, to look over the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as it is.
I'll second.
Okay. If there's no discussion on this, all in favor say aye, or do you want us to raise our hand? Which way do you bet?
Oh,
Both, okay.
well, then I have you on camera.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it looks like the agenda has been approved for today with no addition. The next item will be the approval of the minutes of May 24, which has been quite some time ago, but it's good to know we're still here and back. So have you had an opportunity to read the minutes from the May 24th meeting?
I move that we approve the minutes from May 24th.
You're moving up. You made the motion. You didn't get stuck in it.
Years.
Any question? All in favor of the minutes from May 24th as written, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Thank you. All right. Now, I am overwhelmed and pleased to see as many people here tonight as there is or this afternoon. Somebody out there got something on their mind, maybe they want to talk about it. So this is an opportunity for them to stand up, be recognized, and tell us what they want, but it cannot cover any of the subjects that it's on the agenda. So if there is anyone, now is the time to do it. There is? Okay. Come up to the mic, please.
Yeah, I can do
Wasn't the only one late.
Wait till everybody gets a copy.
You just state your name and address.
Okay. Okay, my name is Sherry Monroe, and I live at 2500 East 12th Street, The Dalles, Oregon. And I am here to represent Mrs. Elaine Reif. She has a request for the commission or a proposal to the commission to consider putting a bench in the Pioneer Cemetery in honor of her husband, Richard, or well known as Dick Reif. He was an ardent supporter of the cemetery. He was volunteering on a regular basis to go there on his own and clean, rake leaves, straighten up headstones, just doing everything that he could to make it look a little bit better and enjoyable for the visitors who come to see it. when I started out on this project, because Mrs. Rife asked me to do this for her. And so I started with Scott Baker at North Wasco County Parks and Rec because she wanted to put a bench down at the Kiwanis Park in Clint's Cove, because Kiwanis already has several down there that have been for memorials for other previous Kiwanians. I was told by Scott that they are no longer doing benches. And the main reason is because of the problems with delivery and shortage of parts, because it's coming from out of the country. He didn't say China, but I'm pretty sure that's where they were coming from. And so when he said that, and I went back and told her that a bench was out of the question, she was upset, because this was something she was really counting on happening, because Kiwanis would have approved this. And so I moved forward and I asked him about other possibilities at Cirrhosis Park, and each of those, they're in the works. They're coming down next year and thereafter, because it's new buildings, it's new projects, replacing the children's park, building a new pavilion. All those things are going to take time, and she would like to see this done a little bit sooner than that. So I'm moving on from that. We talked about possibly doing a tree at Cirrhosis Park. Well, it turns out they do not honor the trees with a person's name. So you just give a donation of a certain amount of money, and then you buy the tree. Well, then they also don't guarantee that the tree will live more than 3 years. So I'm going, well, why would you put money in something like that? So anyway, that didn't work. So I just kept, trying to think of things. And then I remembered how devoted he was to the Pioneer Cemetery. So I started out, I didn't even think about a bench. I started with the plaque that's on the wall, designating it as a landmark, a city landmark, which surprised me that the first person I called was the mayor. And I said, I would like to do this, and how do I go about it? And he didn't even know what I was talking about. Pioneer Cemetery, that's a city park? And I said, yes, it is. Look it up on the internet. And then he suggested I go to Matthew. So I sent Matthew an email, and being his busy schedule, he didn't get back to me right away, and that's fine. And then he suggested that I contact Caitlin. So I did that. And so we're just moving forward. And so I came up with this proposal, which is the second page. You will see prices for a granite bench, and it's the one on the bottom that I have the little asterisks next to. And I think that would fit in beautifully with the theme of the park. And they do the engraving is included in the cost of the bench, and Mrs. Rife will pay for the bench and donate it to the I'm in another room, to the Pioneer Cemetery. And when I've been working through Rage Graphics, and the company they deal with in doing headstones and marble work and granite work and so on is in Hillsborough. And he's pretty sure that they usually have several of these benches in stock, so that we wouldn't have to wait 6 months to get it. And that they typically also would do the cement pad that the bench would sit on. So our plea is, would you consider putting this memorial bench in Dick Rife's memory in Pioneer Park?
Procedure wise, I am at a loss right now, ma'am. I am overjoyed. I'm just overjoyed, but procedure wise, I am at a loss at what you're proposing is within our power to authorize. Because later on in this program, we will talk about Pioneer Cemetery. Hardly ever have a landmark meeting without talking about Pioneer Cemetery. And your proposal sounds wonderful to me, but I don't know at this point if we have the authority to do anything of this nature. We okayed the headstone. I can't remember how many years back was it, Eric?
That was a while ago.
And I don't know what procedure we used to okay that, but whatever it was, it has been done. And I'm sure it can be done again, but for me to blanket out and say, yes, we'll do it, I'm not at that privilege right now. I hope the rest of the committee agrees with me on this, but
May
if you
I?
don't mind, ma'am.
Hmm?
One of the last things we're gonna talk about this afternoon, down in commissioners' comments, will be Pioneer Cemetery. And I love this program, what you're doing right now. I want you to know that you got my heartfelt feelings to get it done. So we'll talk about it there.
Okay.
And it'll be pretty high on our agenda to find out the procedure we can go through. If you got something to add, you're
Yes, I know. I'm like hovering around the mic, but so something that we could do is, she's presented it to the commission today, and we could come back with an application next meeting detailing the bench information. She just sent some of this bench information recently, so I invited her to the commission today to really kind of introduce the idea. In the code here, minor alterations may be approved by the director without being elevated to the commission if it's a fencing or exterior landscape alteration. However, since the Pioneer Cemetery does not have a structure and it's the land itself and the cemetery use that's historic, I do think it would be appropriate if they came with an application to the commission at the next meeting. But this is really an introductory, and you put it out very beautifully on the piece of paper, really thought out of what you're going to say today. But that would be my recommendation to the commission.
thank you, ma'am.
Well, thank you for your time.
It'll get a lot of push from me because I've done a day or two's work at the cemetery.
Thumbs up to you.
Is there anyone else that's got something they'd like to bring up for us? Sure. Ooh, that scares me when you got a whole. Do we have to make a book report?
Kind of. My name is Abby Phelps and I work for the library, and I'm coming to thank you guys for allowing us. Yes, yes. Okay. Personal or library? Okay, the library's address is 722 Court Street. So, and that's here in the Dalles. I wanted to thank you for allowing us to use the Pioneer Cemetery for our book group that we're getting together. We have been promoting community reads through the library, and we do things a little differently at the library here than we do in other libraries. Our goal is to bring people in, to make them, teach them love of reading, and to do different events around different books. And this is our third one that we've done. We've had a wonderful feedback from the community. There's been a lot of involvement, a lot of kid activities, a lot of adults coming to programming. This one is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. And so I actually brought copies. We will be handing out copies free to anybody in the community who wants one. So anybody in the building, anybody here who wants a copy early, but otherwise you can come in on the 2nd and start picking them up. We're going to read through it together at your own pace. We've got a couple of book clubs that are doing it. And then on the 28th, we're going to get together at Pioneer Cemetery, and we're going to have our book club meeting. We're also going to talk, so we're going to talk about the book, but we're also going to talk a little bit about the history of the cemetery in the area as well. And thank you, Caitlin, for going through the cemetery with me and making sure that we picked a respectful place to be. We had everything planned out. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. We're really excited. So
That was wonderful.
I'm excited. I wanted to kind of get ahead of it because I want you guys to understand that I'm very respectful about the property, about what it is, about the history. And the library is as well. And we just wanted to let you know that we're not going to be having a party up there. We will be respectful, and we will ask that all of our participants be respectful as well. So
What's the date for
it's on the 28th of October.
It's not like a Halloween date or anything.
Well, it's close to Halloween. It's the weekend before Halloween. It is a little earlier. It's 5:30 to 6:30.
And with that. whole
Absolutely not. No. It's not tied in with Halloween. And I mean, it's the graveyard book. Everybody's going to have a copy of the book. And this is a middle grade book. I don't know if you're familiar with Neil Gaiman. But this is written for older elementary school kids. It's not Pet Cemetery. It's not a big scary horror movie. It's a really wonderful story. And I actually brought all of our event schedule. So if anybody wants to take a look at that, I figured I'd just leave them up here on the table and you guys could take a look. So do you guys have any other questions? No?
You saved my life. You know that I have a terrible hearing problem. And I talked to Caitlin the other day, and I know she was talking about a book reading, but when I got this bench, I said, man, my hearing must really been bad.
Yep. So anyway, so I brought copies. We are also handing out for those who wanted the graphic novel too. So we really do want to draw kids in who may not be able to access the written word quite as well. So for lower level readers, they'll have that option as well.
How many do you expect?
Well, when we did Alice in Wonderland, we had to buy 2 rounds of Alice in Wonderland. We ended up giving away 150 books, and we gave away about 300 for The Hobbit when we did The Hobbit, and people absolutely read it. And one of my favorite things about The Hobbit was we put a whiteboard up on our big party day, and it said the first time I read The Hobbit was. And so it was really cool to see all of these adults and kids who shared the first time they read the book. So I think for a lot of people, this will be their first read of this, but I have yet to meet an adult who's read this children's book who didn't like it. Everybody who's read, oh, I really liked that. So we're really interested and really looking forward to drawing the community in and doing this together. So we're expecting 30 people. Well, we're capping it at 30 people. But if we will not allow, just because of the space, I don't want to have to try to manage more than 30. But we will have a better idea. We do have a registration on our website. So in order to participate, they must register. And that will also have their name and phone number so that if we can give them a call, we'll know who's there. People are less likely to cause trouble. Not that I anticipate it is, but if you know their name, they're a little less likely to. We will be inviting teenagers, but the teenagers have to be with an adult. That is absolutely flat out. If you're going to come, you have to come as a family. Yeah. And like I said, we'll know closer to how many people have registered for it, but we've gotten some good feedback from people you might not expect in the community who are, they're longtime members, and they're happy to see us doing things outside the library and happy to see the cemetery being utilized. So
One of the problems that has happened there, and there's nothing that can be done that I know of, is even with their 30 people, and let's just say there are only 20 cars, parking is going to be at a real premium.
yes.
I don't know if there's anything that can be done for authorizing temporary parking for that period of time on the other side of the street, because I think we're only allowed to park on one side of the street at that location.
I think so.
If I don't have a clue at what can be done, but if we don't ask, we'll never know.
We're going to encourage carpooling to start with. Everybody who gets an automatic reminder email, and we will encourage carpooling. And then Caitlin also said to talk to the college and see if we could park up there as well and just walk right down around the corner, since it's not a very far walk to that to the southwest entrance, that little gate there. It's on the southwest side. So which will be close to where we're meeting. So
Well, I just see a little thorn in the road.
Yeah, and Caitlin pointed that we talked about that this morning. So she had anticipated that issue as well. And so we had talked about it and we're working on solutions for that. So thank you for bringing that up.
I think it's wonderful that you're gonna do this. I think it's wonderful. The first two comments in this meeting have been about Pioneer Cemetery, and I'm just overjoyed that people realize that it is here. And I was kind of taken back that the mayor was not up to speed, but he'll get up to speed. We'll get him there after a while. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm gonna leave these here and I'll stop by. So yeah, really, anybody who wants a copy. I'm gonna leave our flyers here as well. If there's any left, I'll swing by or I'll let you know, or you can put them up with Matthew. All right, thank you.
Steve Lawrence, 2017 View Court, the Dalles. Today is book report day. I see. When the discussion about building a new high school started some time ago, well, originally I retired to the Dalles to write historical novels. And one of the novels that I've written is called Amotan Field in 2019. But I began to be concerned that what would happen to Amotan Field, that's incorrect spelling. I'm guilty of that. In the 50s, they reversed the vowels. It is Amotan. It has never been Amaton. So if you ever see that spelling, it's the incorrect spelling. And I used the correct spelling in my book. But if, let's say the old high school was ever torn down, what would happen to that historic field? And so I first went to Paula and then Caitlin, and she gave me the site information on the historic site database. It doesn't separate out the field. It just talks about the high school. And so with your permission, I want to read you just a few short pieces of my novel because they're based on research.
Go ahead.
Okay. The gravamen of the story is that a skeleton's been discovered and this kid puts it together and takes it to the high school. And the teacher says, did you know that for thousands of years, Amotan Field was a favorite gathering place for Indians, especially when the winter was hard and they needed a place to stay? A spring ran right where you see that wet area next to the retaining wall below the grandstands. It was called Amotan by the Indians, meaning wild hemp, which grew everywhere. That's where the field got its name. Fresh, clean spring water ran through the middle of a great meadow. When the Methodists established a mission in 1853, they decided to plant a large vegetable garden here and forced the Indians to go elsewhere. After that, the soldiers claimed it as their to grow crops. Now it's a football field venerated by most folks in the Dalles as the place where the 1932, 41, and 47 state championship teams placed and won the championships. Ken's dad had a passion for reading history books about the Dalles. When Ken told him what the teacher said about Amotan Field, his father told him more about how the Indians had used that area for winter lodges. The cold weather settlement was referred to as Wascopom then, meaning people in the spring. The spring itself was called Wasco. Early settlers named the county Wasco. Local Indians and some from far away would come to the area to get through the hard winter months. They would build temporary houses, some underground, to escape the cold east winds that blew across the river. There was barter with local Indians who offered dried huckleberries and camas root. Salmon was dried or mixed with fish roe, then pounded into patties and smoked to preserve it. Amotan Field was iconic, its history known by many throughout the community. The first game was played in 1909. And old timers still talked of the game of 1911 against arch rival Hood River, when the greatest score in the Dalles High School history occurred, 116-0. It was the class of 1950 which named the field after the Indian name for wild hemp, which had grown in abundance in the wide meadow nourished by Amotan Spring for centuries, just as Mr. Yancey had said. State championship teams won in 1914, 1920, and 1923. Pride in these fields energized the community to build a covered grandstand in 1926 on the South Hillside above the field. In 1934, in spite of a national depression, Amatan Field became the first high school field in Oregon to provide illumination for night games. The cost was $2,300. The tradition of family seating areas began and were handed down over the years to successful generations. And I can remember when I played, if the Lawrence family sat here, the Lawrence family sat here. If the Kelly family sat here, that went on for generations. And when they tore it down, the last game was played in 1976. And I'm going to give you each a copy of the handout that was done in 1976. I was very chagrined that they didn't let the old players know and come to that last game. But the history, a lot of it that I have talked about is in this piece of paper. And you will see that the spelling is Amatan. So what I'm asking is if there is a way to ensure that the preservation of Amatan Field as a historical site, not just for football, but for Indians and for their history and the legacy of 10,000 years and what happened there when the Methodist missionaries just simply took it from them. And then the military came in and did the same, and they were just pushed out. And I think it should forever be preserved as a place of history.
You're talking to the choir, my friend.
I know a lot of you know some of this, but I just wanted to have an opportunity to present it.
Could you solidify an idea that I have been told and I have no
I'm going to leave the book too if you want to read it.
I'd gladly do that, but where did the spring flow to so it ended up into Mill Creek? What point did it end up in Mill Creek?
Well, what I know is that, you know, they put a lot of diversion underneath when they built that, and it went to about the area of where the old hospital was, and then it was diverted not to Mill Creek but to the water system. I'm doing another research book now on the Upper Mill Creek community, and that was established in 1885 and died in 1905 when the Dalles put together a water commission and said, we're going to take your water out of Mill Creek, and your 14-mile flume, which delivered your logs down to the Dalles, is no longer yours. And so in doing that, I've done a lot of research on the water and how it flows. And it didn't go back into Mill Creek. It just went into the water system.
Now you're making a fibber out of me, because I thought it meandered around, and someone had told me that it entered it down at Penny Park.
I haven't run into that. I mean, I'm still doing research. So
Yeah.
Dave Anderson out of Public Works has given me access to all of the Water Commission notes, and Barbara Bailey did a history of the Upper Mill Creek community. And I've met with Marilyn Ernest on her Chinese book, because a lot of those people were involved in developing the water system. So I have yet a lot to learn.
Because water runs downhill. That's all I'm real sure.
The problem is, of course, it runs through basalt, you know, in all different kinds of directions. When in 1990, they decided to give the Civic Auditorium to the nonprofit instead of tearing it down, you could see water in the fireside room through the floor running underneath the building through the basalt.
So I just stood there and looked and said, well, it looked like it could meander around and end up about here in the old days. And that's where, but.
Well, I'll check on that.
That's why.
Now you've got my curiosity up, because the way I read it is that they developed pump stations and they just took care of the water in that manner. And interestingly enough, just so you know, the Water Commission, after very few years, evidently accumulated enough money. They started loaning, which I didn't know it happened, loaning to private owners of property money to put in their water system. And then just like a bank, and then they would pay back to the Water Commission. So a lot of the facilities that got water service got that through a loan from the Water Commission.
I probably keep my story the same as it is because I haven't heard any contradictory.
And Governor Moody at the time became the commissioner chair. That was very interesting. So I'm going to leave this with you. I just appreciate any consideration to this that you can give.
Here again, it's beyond this commission. We'll have to figure out where we go as far as the state. The state allows us to increase our historic districts, and I believe we have reason to qualify for an historic district. I didn't realize that was not in a district.
So it is listed. It is listed on our local inventory. The Dallas High School is listed, as well as, the whole property is listed. So anything that would happen on that property would need to apply to have with the Historic Landmarks Commission for review, especially demolition, but any additional structure would, since it is on the local listing. There is just nothing further than that local listing, like an archaeological zone or
When they tore down the covered grandstands, did that come through the commission?
I would need to take a look. Do you know what year that was?
Well, it was after 76. I don't know what year it was, but
Yeah.
Because
they
That
quit.
might have been before we had a historic landmark.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
It was right close.
Yeah, somewhere in there was about when it formed.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. It's been wonderful. This is a wonderful way to open a meeting.
That's true.
I wanted to add just one more thing. Louis Scholl rented a property up there when he came back to the Dalles in 1867. He rented it from the Army because at that point, the Army owned the property up there. And so he wrote some correspondence back and forth with Fort Vancouver, who was the administrators at that time, and included some maps because he was having some property disputes with the neighbors about who could access water from the spring. So there's some pretty good maps that
Well, there's a story of a Canadian who had about halfway down the flume, had a little bit of alfalfa. And he would go and open up the flume so he'd get water, and then he'd go sit on his porch with a 45-70 Buffalo rifle and dare anybody to say anything to him.
Well, that changed their mind anyhow, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, come on up. Introduce yourself and the whole thing.
I just had an added comment,
Make sure to state your name and address, please, for the commission.
get into this.
You don't fit in this council chair anymore, Carol.
I know. No, this is a little different. Carolyn Wood, 1709 Liberty Way. When the Dallas High School restoration it was when we built on the new wing, and at some place I'm remembering discussion that Amaton Spring was the source now of non-city water that can water this Amaton Field and all that area. I don't know if that's true, but that was the popular belief, or we were led to believe that. So I don't know if that's true or not.
All I know is there's a mud pile over the grandstands. Parker would put us over there.
I would think somebody in the school district should know whether there is a access to that. Anyway, at the time we thought, oh, that's great, you know, shortage of water costs something. It would be great for that to be, you know, to use for the grounds at the Amaton Field.
Thank you. I'm overjoyed. I don't know if we can carry on from here or not, but we'll make an effort. All right, we've had our public comment up, or is there someone else out there that wants to add something to this? If there isn't, we're gonna go on to the next item, and that's gonna be our public hearing. And it's application 214-23. It's a request from the Wall Dogs to paint one mural on the northeast facing wall of the Bond Wood Building. You're sitting awful close to that young man, and you do a fine job of reading. If you would take this agenda or rules and regulations for a public hearing, and
I got you.
okay, I'll be quiet.
Now is the time specified for the Historical Landmarks Commission to conduct a public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider the following matter, which is HLC application 214-23. The substantive criteria upon which the Historic Landmarks Commission will base its discussion in this matter are contained in the city's comprehensive plan and land use and development ordinances. A public hearing is required by law and certain rules apply. First and foremost, you must be recognized by the chair in order to speak and present testimony. When recognized by the chair, please proceed to the microphone and state your name and mailing address for public record. The hearing is required by law to be tape recorded. Generally, the public hearing procedure is as follows. Prior to the public hearing, a determination will be made of all the qualifications of the commission members and allow for challenges from the audience. Bob will open the public hearing with it, or wait, what is this? I will open the public hearing with a staff report. The purpose of the staff report at this point is to further identify the applicable criteria of the case being considered and to provide background information about the case. After the staff report, we will hear testimony from the proponents, those persons in favor of the application. Next, there will be testimony from the opponents, those not in favor of the application. Next, there will be testimony from anyone else who wishes to offer testimony or ask questions. Then, to honor the right of rebuttal, we will again hear from those in favor of the application. To expedite the hearing, commission members may ask questions of persons as they testify. When this process has been concluded, we will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. During the hearing, some important standards apply. First of all, those who testify must hold their testimony to the decision criteria. As in all land use hearings, there are no complete set of rules, procedures, and criteria that we must follow. Second, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission members and parties an opportunity to respond to that issue precludes an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Third, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with details specific enough to allow the city to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in the circuit court. Fourth, prior to the conclusion of the public hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. If such a request is made, the law states the commission must grant the request by either continuing the hearing to a time and date at least 7 days from the date of the initial hearing, or the record must be kept open for a period of at least 7 days. These are the rules. Are there any questions? Nope. You want me to continue or you?
No, you're doing just fine. And the big question in my mind is why I waited so long to ask people of your nature to do this.
You're asking other people.
All right. At this point, we'll ask the staff if they have a report for this application.
Staff has a report. Just one moment while I share my screen. Already? Could you please state, open the public hearing, Bob?
Did I open?
You said you'd read the rules, but you never actually said the public hearing is now open or.
Okay. Well,
Let's do it now.
now is the time that we're, as the Landmark Commission, are going to review the application. And I go back and give you all the big numbers.
Oh, it's okay.
That's enough? We got enough. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so today we are talking about a application 214-23. This application is for Meadow Outdoor in the Mural Fest Committee. It is to paint a mural on 103 East 3rd Street. Now, this is part of the Gates Hotel. It is classified as a primary and historic building in the downtown commercial historic district. The current use right now is a commercial use. There is Bonds Printing in the nearby building and a medical family facility as well. Here's a map of where this property is located. As you can see, it's just across the street from City Hall. Oh, sorry, just across the parking lot from City Hall. Pardon me. So here are some older photos that I've found of the Gates Hotel. It was built by N.H. Gates in 1884. It is considered an Italianate style, listed as a primary resource in the National Register of Historic Places in the Dalles. So, according to a 1889 Sanborn fire insurance map, it indicated that the building was once a stationery store, which it still is today, and a portion of it, a post office, grocery store, and with some second floor dwellings. The building had various uses throughout the following years, but in this section of the building that we're talking about today was an addition that was built in 1977. It's a concrete addition on the east elevation, and you can't really see it in some of these historic photos, but you can see it here where the proposed mural is, and here in the existing conditions photo. So you can see that there's the brick Gates Motel and then this concrete addition that was added in 1977. So the applicants are proposing to paint a mural on the northeast face of this building. It would be 12.5 feet wide by 26.5 feet wide and then 12.5 feet tall. And it is going to be right next to the existing cherry mural that is on the same building face. So taking a look at the staff report here, a lot of our criterion look at, okay, what is some, what's the historic character of the property and is it going to be preserved? So staff found that with this additional mural on this building face, that is not deteriorating the historic character of the building, and it's not removing any historic materials with this paint. It is a previously painted building. So staff found that it's not, degrading any historic material like painting a brick building would be. Staff found that there is no distinctive features, finishes, or construction techniques on this face of the building, as it is a concrete block building. And also with the and also that there's no really deteriorating historical features that would be harmed with this additional mural on this side. So our standards also highlight that chemical or physical treatments such as sandblasting that cause damage to historic material shall not be used. The surface cleaning of structures, if appropriate, shall be undertaken using the gentlest means possible. So staff included that as a condition of approval with this application, which has been consistent with all of the other mural applications going forward to ensure that they are using the best practices possible. So looking at one other criterion here is that all new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible in massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment. So I highlighted this criteria because when we're talking about massing, we want to make sure that the proposed mural is appropriate in scale to the rest of the building. Staff felt that this size was appropriate to the scale of this building, as there is an additional mural of the similar size right next to the building, and it does not cover any of the second floor of the Gates Motel that is right in the back of this 1977 addition, which is really the primary kind of jewel of this property. And then for the last finding here, the mural for the signs, it is a previously painted historic resource. And so staff felt that adding additional paint would not degrade any of, the historic integrity or damage the building face with this application. So that's a summary of my staff report here. I did include the sketch of the proposed mural. As you can see, it says "Where Wheat is King." It has some depictions of the wheat fields and I believe, Hi-Ho crackers, which seems to be, an output of our wheat fields that surround the Dalles. And that concludes the staff report. The proposed conditions of approval are posted on the screen here, talking about the chemical and physical treatments that I mentioned earlier, but also stating that the applicant shall obtain a sign permit approved by the Community Development Department prior to installation or painting of the mural. And the applicant has already submitted that with the Community Development Department, but it has not been approved and is pending approval upon determination from the Historic Landmarks Commission. And that concludes the staff report. Thank you.
Any questions from the commission at this point of staff? All right, do we have a representative that wants to tell us how wonderful it's going to be to have there he is. Haven't seen you in a long while. Come on up, identify yourself.
Thank you for having me. And it's good to see you all full-bodied and not on the
Right.
a lot of meetings with little faces, and including mine. My name is John Lehman, and I reside at 92464 Biggs Rufus Highway in Rufus, Oregon. So I'm the applicant representative along with Meadow Outdoor and the Mural Fest Committee. Caitlin said mostly what needs to be said. This is the second half really of a mural that covers the side of the building and commemorates already back in 2020, the teaser mural that was first painted commemorating and honoring the cherry farming here in the Dalles area. And this is the second half that'll honor and commemorate historic wheat production in the Dalles, Oregon. They kind of balance each other and are very similar themes. As Caitlin mentioned, there could be no sandblasting or prep work that would disturb the block or the makeup of the building. We've already done some very sorry, I'm drawing a blank. And I'm shaking too. And it's not from nervousness. Sorry, it's something else. For some very gentle cleaning of the building with light power washing. No sandblasting whatsoever has been done, and a coat of base paint has been added in preparation for the approval of the mural and the hopefully the painting of this beautiful mural that's going to be made by the Wall Dogs. I'm here to answer any questions if you have any, and if I can answer them.
I want to commend you this is one of the first ones that we've had an application for that we had some idea what we were gonna see when it was all done. The rest of them are all mysteries when we were approving them.
Well, this one's,
I
this
think-
one is, oh, good, good. Yeah, this one, there's a rough sketch. I know there's a lot of artistic license that they take as they develop the mural and get to its final look, color, feel. The sketch that Caitlin showed is, I think, pretty close to what it's going to look like, but the colors and the blends, I'm sure that they come up with that as they get closer and closer to the actual painting.
Any commissioner have? Thank you. And we'll call on you again after we call on your opponents, and then we call on the mystery. And then you come back and tell us how wonderful it's gonna be again. And then we'll get on with the procedure. So you can stay right there if you want, as far as I'm concerned, unless someone comes up. Is there any opponent to this mural in the audience or on the radio or on the air or anything that you're aware of? Is there anyone here that wants to just make a comment to add to or subtract from? Not hearing that. Oh, yes, Carolyn, come up forward, identify yourself. You can share the chair with him.
He won't, I won't buy it.
I know you won't, Carolyn.
Carolyn Wood, 1709 Liberty Way. I just wanted to clarify, I'm one of the historians who helped select all these choices, but I also happen to be a co-owner of the building. To clarify the Hi-Ho Cracker Box, Sunshine Mill, which is now a winery, used to be a flour mill. And there was a great big billboard in front of it for many, many years that said Sunshine Mill, and it had Hi-Ho crackers on it. That mill produced flour that went into the cracker industry. And that is why the cracker box says Hi-Ho on it. Just
Thank you.
clarification.
Do you have any further thing that you want to tell us before we close the public part of this hearing?
In closing, I'd just like to say it is going to be wonderful. And I hope that, and thank you for the possibility to approve this for a beautiful painting. Thanks.
Thank you. Hearing no other comments, I'm going to close the public part of the hearing. And we, as a commission, will deliberate on whether this is a viable thing to do or not. So speak up here, we're free.
I like the idea. I don't see why we wouldn't do it.
I'm with Forrest.
I think it's a great idea that the wall dogs will be coming, the artists will be the same caliber of the other murals.
I'm not sure if somebody painting a mural right now, you know,
I know.
and I think that's the wall dog. Is it? The mural that's being painted as we speak?
That's something separate, I think.
Public hearing is the public portion is closed. So we can't ask more questions.
I was asking these people, wasn't really. So you can get ahead of the game. You can make the motion tonight.
I move that we approve. this-
Now
this
you got it
mural.
all right there in front of you.
Okay. Oh, my gosh.
We're not laughing
Make a
at you, we're
motion.
laughing with you.
Yeah, right. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve this HLC application 21423 for the Wall Dogs to paint one mural on the northeast facing wall of the Bondwood building
With conditions,
with conditions.
and they are proposed conditions of approval, 1 and 2, and that's all you gotta say.
With conditions, proposed conditions 1 and 2.
Is that clear in the mud, Paula?
I'll second that
Made a
motion.
And now we got a second, see, now we got competition. Okay, any further discussion on this proposal? raise your hand and say aye if you're in favor.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed isn't here, so I guess probably it passed. While we're in the mood of making motions and passing motions, let's just take care of the resolution that follows right behind there. And would anyone like to make a motion to accept the resolution, or do you want to add to it or subtract from it?
I'll make the motion to approve HLC Resolution 200-23 from Meadow Outdoor Advertising and the Mural Fest Committee with conditions 1 and 2.
I second that motion.
I knew you
Fire.
could do.
I'm on fire.
If there is any further discussion, we will ask for a vote. No further discussion. We'll ask for a vote. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Alright,
I don't see anybody opposed, so that motion has been passed unanimously. That is the extent of our formal business. Has staff got a comment that you would like to add at this point?
I do have some comments I'd like to add. So first and foremost, I'd like to introduce our new associate planner. His name is Frank Glover. And Frank, if you just want to introduce yourself quickly to the commission.
Glover. I just accepted this job in the summer. My first day was September 5th. I'm from North Carolina. I was most recently a broadband representative from Marion County for 1 year. I did a fellowship in Marion County, Salem, and before that, I was a city planner in Hampton, Virginia. But I'm from North Carolina.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Yeah, and Frank will be probably making some appearances here in the future with helping on some HLC applications. So we're really excited to have Frank here. So thanks, Frank.
Wonderful.
Oh, and I have one more comment too before we move on.
You're about the only other staff. We got
Okay,
here,
cool.
so
Perfect. So I thought we were going to move on before I could finish.
Got you wore down. I got a lot of questions for staff when we get around to it.
Okay. All right. I'll be ready. Well, I did.
Oh,
So I wanted to let you guys know that staff is looking into replacing some of the signage over on the Rock Fort. So this is this is along the Columbia River. As you can see, these are some of the existing signage that is here. It's pretty sun damaged and it's cut up quite a bit. It's hard to see from these pictures, but it is kind of just people have been scraping into them and things happen in the public field. So we have to just upgrade things from time to time. Staff is thinking about upgrading it to a similar resolution as this sign. As you can see, there's like different material that this sign is made with that doesn't have that like thick kind of clear, I don't know, plastic that's on top. It just seems to get really sun dyed and damaged over time. And so I wanted to let you all know that staff is looking into replacing these. It would be a like for like replacement at this point. However, if we do intend on changing anything significantly, we would let the Historic Landmarks Commission know. But I'll keep you updated as we do this replacement project. Do you guys have any questions about this replacement? This is just an example of the other one that's newer. Mm-hmm.
How many are there to be replaced?
It would just be these two that would be replaced. So the small informational signs. Yeah, staff's looking at creative ways to kind of upkeep this space, and so signage was one of the first things that needed attention. Yeah.
I'm going to ask a question of you on Rock Ford.
Yeah.
We was handed, Eric and I were in attendance, some sort of authority, but I don't know just what it was and how much ink it had on Pioneer Cemetery. And they handed that to the Landmark Commission to maintain, do something with. But when we questioned that about Rockfort after Rockfort came into the picture and was very heavily visited by the tour boats. The city said, no, that was going to be part of their Parks and Rec, or Carolyn, you straighten me out. There's another group, Oregon Trail or something.
You don't have to say your name again. We know you.
Huh?
You don't have to.
Oh, okay. I was on the historic landmark, no. The Oregon Historic Trails Advisory Committee to ODOT. And that goes back before the Lewis and Clark tour in 2006, the anniversary. They had a lot to do with identifying the Lewis and Clark Trail along the Columbia. And I think some of the first signs that were installed came from the National Park Service. And I don't know, I know we installed a couple of them through that, but then there were more added when we got closer to the actual celebration. And I was not involved. Of course, I went off of that committee. But that committee, the state committee, the Oregon Historic Trails Advisory Committee to ODOT, was an outgrowth of the Oregon Centennial in about 1990. Well, before that, it went clear back to identifying the Oregon Trail as an ad hoc committee. Then it became organized as the Centennial Committee. Then it morphed through acts of the legislature to the Oregon Historic Trails Committee, which identified 16 important historic trails in Oregon. And then that's when the Barlow Road and the Oregon Trail and the Lewis and Clark Trail and the Nez Perce Trail, which were national trails, got an Appleseed Trail, got added, we added what, well, let me see, that's 4. So we added 12 more important historic trails in Oregon to that. And the committee did a document about 2 or 3, well, probably 2 inches thick, which you may have a copy someplace here, or there's one at the library. That was the basis of the historic research that the Oregon Trail Committee did before we morphed into the advised committee to ODOT and state parks. But I was told Sam Woolsey and I and a few others have served on that, and we had 3-year or 4-year terms. Anyway, my understanding is that the state under Governor Brown has dissolved that advisory committee. So I guess you would go to state parks to say, okay, is there somebody responsible or not? And then I can't say, and I don't know how the national parks trails were connected with us when I was involved in it, but I don't know what has happened to that.
And that is kind of interesting because you can see on these updated signs, on this one updated sign, there's the national parks in the right-hand corner. So it's really interesting. I can bring that up to staff. That's very helpful to see if we make sure that we have all the right approvals.
Yeah, and I don't know if Chamber had something to do with installing some of those later signs. I don't know where the later signs came. The 2 that face the river. The significance of Rockfort, it's big significance. It's one of the few camping spots that is above water.
Yes.
Most camping places of the Lewis and Clark Trail are underwater just because of the dams. And that site has been filled in somewhat. When Judge Hulse was during the Oregon Trail. I think it was after the Oregon Trail Committee started, but for safety purposes, I remember Judge Hulse saying the reason they think it was where they actually camped was because it was quite a low dip and it got closer, you could get closer to the river and they could drag boats up into that. Well, later the county filled that in so that it was fairly level with what we call the road grade. In about I think it was someplace in the 70s, Gladys Super was the one that put in the application to get it declared a national historic site. And there is a brass plaque on a rock that's up high. You have to walk up the rocks and a little bit east to that block that has a brass plaque. That was the first thing that was there. That's what we knew as Rockfort for a long time. So anyway, it has been raised and leveled. The main thing that the national park people did not want to see happen, because there was talk about putting in paved walkways or wooden walkways to make it handicapped accessible. They were always discounted that because this is as close as you get to the natural form of what was there. So they did not support further clearing out the weeds. That was a big piece of what the county did, I think, and we had discussions between the county and the city and the parks when I was on council about who should be taking care of the weeds out there. So anyway, it's much easier to get around in now. It's more level. It's nearly level. So anyway, that's what I know.
I had understood that the actual Rockfort site was now underneath the freeway.
Well, there's also that is part of the conversation. Also, remember that the Channel or Mill Creek, it came back in there. They camped here twice, going and coming. So one was fall and one was spring. They could have camped in one and the other place the other time, just because of the difference in the water level. They talk about being up someplace. If you go out there and walk up the west side of that and go over, you're down into more of little dips and valleys. And also on the west side, east side, so that they could have, they could have camped in any part of all that, or did in the fall or did in the spring. It might have been high water. Maybe in the spring, that's where they did camp. In the fall, they may have come up the creek a little. Partly they were looking for safe spot. By fall, they might not have felt so threatened. Who knows?
Thank you for that. That's giving me some homework.
The reason I'm bringing this up is I am not real clear in my mind if that is an historic site as far as the Landmark Commission, or if that is a part of a city park, or just what it is. The last word I had when I thought, well, boy, we got the cemetery and that we're growing, is they said, oh, no, you guys don't have anything to do with the Rockfort. You just stay at the cemetery. And I thought, well, maybe that's more than we can handle anyhow, so we'll just stay there. But so I didn't know if it had ever been really clarified, just if is it a part of the city park system?
I know that the city of the Dalles maintains the site. I am looking at my computer now because I am looking. Because I'm looking to see if it's locally listed in our in our inventory here. Just might take me a while to look into it, but I can answer it before the end of the meeting.
I just wanted to get it back on a subject that we are more versed on. We know where we're at, because I understood that the city was not going to accept Pioneer Cemetery as a part of their system. They were making it a separate system at the time they assigned it to the Landmark Commission. And so consequently, we went through quite a long struggle at that time to get funding. And it took us quite a few years before we ever got it on the city budget for any kind of maintenance there. It was always said, well, you guys go find a crew and go up and cut the grass. Remember that, Eric?
Oh, yeah.
and pick up the dead limbs and so on and so forth. And so I was overjoyed when the city finally put us on their budget cycle. And we can talk about that a little bit later, but anyhow, when you're talking about going back out to Rockford,
Mhm.
please save it. Please elaborate and make it as pretty as and accessible as we can. But who are we doing it for? Are we doing it for the park commission or are we doing it for whom?
Well, it is. So I did just pull up the listing here on the screen. And so it is on the State of Oregon Inventory of Historic Places. So it is inventoried as the Rockport campsite. So that's a reason, a good reason that you guys all get input. And, you know, even if it's just a replacement of the signs just for upkeep. But it is my understanding that the city maintains the site, does the weed whacking, and our maintenance, our facility crew is coordinating the replacement of some of these signs.
We got into some kind of a hassle that even had Wasco County involved in it because it was something to do with Wasco County, but I can't.
Right. I think Wasco County owned it at one point, and then the
Mm.
city traded some property and it became city property after that. And then it became Landmark's jurisdiction. And there's also a management plan for
Mm.
the Rockfort, which was one of the things that the Landmarks Commission funding approved. One of our SHPO grant rounds paid for that management plan for it. So
Mr. Agee, I don't know if this is that important, but Mr. Agee did tours with his natural history for like 35 years with his students. And he said that it's very significant because of the way the rocks there, it's stayed the same and it matches the journal from Lewis and Clark. And it's a really important thing. It's I had never heard that there might have been a lower and just that. So I think good on you, Caitlin. Good signs. Keep it going.
And I'll double check too to make sure. I mean, if we do need to consult the National Park Service, but I'll cross my I's and T's there.
Well,
Dot my I's, but yeah.
it is something that we probably should refresh all our memories on,
Mm-hmm.
where the responsibilities lie. And like I said, for heaven's sake, don't neglect it. We can do anything and enlarge it, but it was kind of a controversial thing well before your tenure.
Okay. No, that's a great note that I really appreciate that. So
And
I
I-
can,
And again,
I think
So I agree with Eric. It finally got sorted out, but there was a time when I remember in a meeting where that was left in limbo because some little issue came up. And there was a trade, and it was always about who was gonna cut the weeds.
yeah, that's exactly
So,
right.
the city finally, I think, got it back, and I don't remember what we were trading, but, in fact, there was a time when we were sorting out a lot of different pieces. of
Carolyn.
property. There was.
Carolyn, I won't have you on the record unless you come up and I'm sorry. Why don't you just stay there for the rest?
I know.
Not in a bad way.
Now, what did I say? It all took place when I was on council. I can't remember if it was the first or the second time, but there was quite a bit of discussion, and we went through the process of getting the plan written so that they would know what they were going to do with it. And this was been back probably also with the idea that the Lewis and Clark celebration was coming along. People were going to be visiting it, and we wanted to get these signs put up in it, but there was always this controversy about who was going to. Well, for several years, I think the county did do the mowing, but then more people became concerned about the cost, and there was and I'm glad to know that it was traded to the city and that it's on the National Register of Historic Places. That's been, I think, for a long time. So anyway, that's my memory.
It's not a give or die or anything condition here, but there is time that we get some clarification. of just exactly where the responsibility lies,
I can do that. I can do that and report back to the commission.
and what I'm trying to say here.
Mhm.
And that was one of my questions tonight. Okay. Are you,
That is,
spoke your piece?
yes, that concludes the staff comments. Thank you.
Eric, what can we do for you this time? Have you got something to report for the commission?
Let's see. I guess I was thinking about, well, for what Steve Lawrence brought up and stuff, maybe we need to do a landmarks. Because we have local landmarks applications and we haven't really approved a local landmarks application in a decade or so. And that's something we can do as a commission. So somebody just needs to fill out a local landmarks application. So we could do a separate one for Amaton Field with some of the information that he's gathered, and that might be good. And then I think we also need to do one for that out in front of St. Peter's Church in the middle of the road there. There's a brass plaque that states what the paving material used on the original historic highway is. It's a plaque from when the historic highway was paved that somehow has survived all of these decades. And we should landmark that as well.
It's on the road?
It's in the middle of the intersection there in front of St. Peter's and 3rd Street there.
I walk across
It's
it all the time.
It's an oval plaque about that big that says what it's made out of and the company and the date and everything. Yeah, it's a pretty amazing thing. So we should probably see about landmarking that just so people don't forget about it next time the intersection gets repaved or whatever. People have been caring about it for 100 years now. So, so that's pretty cool. And then I had a question for staff. I know the old Sears building, when they were going to replace the windows and we told them, and they put in the vinyl windows and we told them no, they had to either replace them with wood or put the old windows back in. They've changed the windows since then, right? And it looks like they're aluminum windows. So I don't know.
The windows on the alley
Yeah.
is what we had, and they replaced them with wood painted windows and then painted them black on the
Okay.
alley side. Are you talking about the front though?
No, I'm talking about the alley side because
Okay.
they kind of look like aluminum windows to me, but I'm not positive.
Okay. I mean,
did.
I saw them put it in. And, I saw them kind of making sure the wood,
Yeah,
fit.
it
So
could be
I'm pretty.
Just the black makes it look like it's metal.
Yeah, it's almost it's hard to tell the difference. It does look pretty sharp, but also they have screens in front of it now, so it's harder to see the detail too. I can follow up with you too and provide some pictures. I appreciate you watching out. That's good.
That's all I had.
Julie, I'm not sure, because my memory is slipping fast. Are you a member of the commission now, or are you still representative from the museum?
Latter, I'm a representative from the museum.
Okay, I'll skip you for a minute, but we will be back to you. All right, Forrest, what about you for a second?
Actually, I have nothing to report despite this long time between meetings. I don't have anything.
Yeah, you look younger though. I want to commend you. All right, Bev, what about this?
I don't have anything to report. I was concerned about the new mural going in and just the procedure of how that maybe Caitlin could address, do you know about the new one on 3rd Street?
Then so I'm
Universal-
right. So that one is approved with the original large batch of murals that were approved. And so this new one was not part of that original large batch of murals that we
Is the
approved.
mural That went up at the under,
I just don't think they painted it right away, but we approved it on a previous application for that on the one on 3rd Street that's being painted now, right across from the Flapjacks mural, right? We're talking about that one on the Von Borstel building.
yes.
Yes. Yep. So I'm
Been painted this week.
right. So that one's already been approved, but then this new one was not included in their original historic landmarks applications.
Okay, I was just curious because I thought we've approved a whole bunch of them and I didn't remember that one coming before us in the protocol. Is anyone aware what I'm talking about?
The one that the CCC News, it says Von
Yeah,
Borstel.
yeah, yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a living family. That's not historic particularly.
Oh, are you talking about the one that's right next to the Flapjacks mural?
Jacks, no.
Okay. So-
In the last,
right.
3-4 days. And I was just curious, that's
I
because
didn't think it'd,
I hadn't seen it come before us and I was just curious.
I think it was one of those, when we got a whole bunch of locations to approve and it
Oh,
was
so
one of
it
those
wasn't
ones.
Shuffled in that deck and.
Yeah.
Done, okay.
Yeah, we didn't,
Just curious.
do we do
before
living
we-
families? And
oh, I think so. I mean, I think there's isn't there the sign paint, the Honold one on the
okay.
Civic and
that's true.
I think
Yeah.
they have generations in that family that have done wheat.
They're Sherman County people though, not Wasco County, which is interesting. They
well.
were our next door neighbors in Grass Valley.
Oh, okay.
Out on the ranch.
But anyway, I was just curious.
Yeah,
Oh, that's good.
curious, very
Well,
curious.
Sherman
Yeah.
County used to be part of
It
Wasco.
sure did.
On yet some of the murals that we approved too are like the Mi Familia mural that celebrates Mexican heritage, and that's right on Second Street. So that was just some they're not all the murals that were painted were historic, like from historical context on the nose, but they were in our historic district.
Bulldogs that they brought out privately to do it.
Yeah, well, yes. So Wall Dogs painted those murals, but it wasn't the historic.
The one this week, they brought out wall dogs.
I believe so. I believe so. Oh, they're not there, but yes, I think so.
Okay.
Curious, that's just, I was just right on top of things, Bob.
Scott, it's a pleasure to see you here tonight.
Be here.
Come join us more often. You're welcome to ask any of the questions if we'll try to answer or we'll just kind of look at you, but
Well, this is great. Every time I come in, I learn about a new tourist spot I can go check out. So tonight it's the plaque on the road and check out that mural thing going on there.
It's a beautiful mural. I was just.
And the last time I attended a meeting, you spoke about a rock up by the high school.
yes,
That was the original where they
Yeah.
platted out the plots. And
right.
I'm thinking is it covered with ivy now? Because I
Yes.
drove back. Okay. I know
Yes,
where
it is. It's
Very-
heavily covered with ivy.
Strawberry Rock. Yeah.
strawberry.
Yeah.
I want to go see that.
That was
And where is it? It's in the, it's.
It's behind
I'm
the
old and slow, but you people are still young.
it's in the alley behind the I don't know what the church
church
used to be.
there.
Yeah.
by
But it's covered with ivy, so you can't tell it's a rock.
No, you
But
cannot.
it's obvious that's got to be it. So that's fascinating stuff.
I didn't want to go into it with Mr. Lawrence, but did they have two springs or is the water that was in Amatown, some of it diverted over to that property where that rock is? Because that flows out onto 11th Street very strongly. You can stand out there and listen to it go down the storm sewer.
There's springs all over there. The Walworths who lived just to the north of the Strawberry Rock area had their basement flooded one year and had to put in a French drain. So they're, and when I carried mail back in the day,
Didn't know that.
yeah, there was a house up in that area on near Washington Street that was always having drainage down through their front yard. It's set way back from the road.
Our house over on K Street has a creek channel down in the basement.
Oh.
And supposedly it used to flow pretty regularly before they paved all the streets.
Eric, you talked one time, sometime back about, on one of the fire maps, about a water tank in the area of where the Methodist parking lot is now.
I can't remember a water tank up there. I know there's some privy pits up there.
Well, I just wondered because it'd be interesting if
I
nothing
think there
more.
was a windmill with a water tank up there. Yeah.
It'd be interesting for us as Methodists and for the whole community to realize that there was an attempt for modernization, pardon me, because there was a vast flow of water there, but it was all on the ground level. And if you could have raised it at all, you could have had running water in any kind of a home you had right there close with whatever piping they could find in those days. And that would be just an interesting aspect to develop out to see if it actually, and how they would get the water from where it flows in the spring up into a water tower. That's another problem. Maybe they had lots of little kids and they just.
I think they might have had a windmill. I think there was a comment on the map about a windmill, but I'll have to see.
Well, does anyone know there's a fountain on the corner of Union and 10th? Does anyone know if that was water provided that out of the springs or?
I'm sure it did. I'm sure it did. I'm still holding my old idea that the creek meandered around and came out somewhere back towards Mill Creek. I can't see it getting up high enough to ever get back over, and so it'd get anywhere near Dry Hollow or anything. And I don't know where the additions of that spring had to go someplace. I got one flowing right through my backyard, and it'll be there forever, much longer than I am. All right, Julie, I'm not just only you're just number one now.
I'm the last.
What's
on the
going
list.
on up at the museum?
Well, there's a big furor in the town about why the cruise ships aren't depositing people up there, which really cut into our, I don't know, our attendance at the museum. That's just one aspect of it. I got a grant from the Wasco County Cultural Trust to transcribe handwritten minutes from the old Fort Dallas Historical Society. And so I'm concluding that grant, and we'll have those things available for public. Eventually they're being transcribed and people will be able to do word searches on them and find out. I mean, Eric, you've seen them. I mean, they're just dense, beautiful handwriting, but to find out who donated what has been very difficult, and this will make that accessible. But transcription takes so much longer than the, I mean, I'm doing it pro bono, but we were trying to pay somebody to do that. And it just takes hours and hours, and you have to check back and look at the names to see that they were right. But it's wonderful. It's really fun.
I am overly ashamed of myself, Scott. Hello, Scott.
Hello, no problem.
I
Always-
overlooked you up on the wall. You're hard to
That's all right.
distinguish.
I was a scout on the wall.
Scott,
Yes,
you're
sir.
a commissioner. You have some rights here now. You want to speak up?
I always defer to you, Bob. It's always thank you for giving me the space here. Yeah, so in May, I introduced a project I've been working on with the college, also with the Wasco County Cultural Trust grant, which was the history viewer. And I think Caitlin had inserted that into the notes, but I can also share that. So basically, what this project is it's a viewer so that there's a transparency there, and I showed this before, but just as a reminder, there's a plaque on the front, and this is interchangeable, this image here. It rotates on 2 axes. So the idea is that a person could come and take a hold of it, and like you see the hand here, and make adjustments, and then it aligns with what's on the street. So that was the Chapman Building, that's the Discount Plus parking lot, and this is the actual transparency with it in alignment, looking across. So it's a way to really kind of activate, it's almost like an installation, almost like a sculpture, to really activate a space and provide some history. So the reason I'm bringing this up is that looking to apply for a grant with the State Historic Preservation Office. I've been in conversations with Caitlin and Josh and Matthew, and then also different members of the community, looking for support with this project. So the idea is that create 5 more of these and then have them in the city that would highlight different buildings, historic features, or even sites like the Opera House, or something along those lines, and then work with the Historic Preservation, or excuse me, Historic Landmark Commission, and hopefully with the museum and other community members on site selection, and then materials for basically we could add this on as part of the walking tour. And also there again would be a plaque on the front of it. So in talking with Caitlin, we were discussing possibly a letter of support from the commission for the application. So that would be the request, would be I guess maybe staff or writing a letter of support on behalf of the commission.
And yeah, and just to comment on the staff portion of it, once we get farther along with the grant application and kind of get a full scope submitted, yeah, staff could look into, writing a letter of support like this. It's still in the, I guess, still working on some of the organizational aspects of it. But yeah, I mean, definitely staff could write a letter of support for something like this. Or the commission could possibly sign off on a communal letter, but we can kind of cross that bridge once we have the full grant application too for this project. But yeah, that was a great recap, Scott, and I didn't add it to the presentation slide, so it's great that you're able to share your screen.
Sure.
Scott had approached me as a representative from the Fort Dallas Museum Surgeon's Quarters. You've been gone. And it just seemed to write a letter of support from the commission. It seemed to me that there's a good potential to have, if those things are movable, or that we could have one that would show where Colonel Wright's house was. So things like that.
Yeah.
Lots of potential, I think.
And that's a great thing. I'm glad you highlighted that, Julian. We've been kind of corresponding about the project and the scope, and the intention is that these could move around. So they are mobile. They would just we're working on the attachment points, but basically that they could be moved around and feature different sites around the city. So it'd be 5 of these, and then they could move to different places and feature different things. So you keep it kind of active and moving throughout.
Thank you, Scott. I'm sorry I overlooked you.
No problem. Thank you.
Any further comment from anyone at this point? And if there isn't, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
you're a
second
man-
it.
Man after my own heart. Thank you. We'll get together and straighten me out on what we've got to do to get permission from somebody, God or whoever, to put a bench in the cemetery.
Yeah, so we'll have kind of what we talked about in the meeting. Seems like, we'll put together an application to be presented to you all. I mean, if they're interested in moving forward still. But I think it was a good discussion. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of the next step here. But, it's also good to kind of figure out a framework too on, okay, so there might be other memorials that people want to put in kind of a cemetery of folks that were not buried in the cemetery. And so that would just kind of challenge you all to, it's not in the preservation plan, and it's not really outlined in the standards and stuff. Just kind of all to mull over, what would we do in a situation? You're getting a lot of plaques, or, I think the bench is great because there's no pedestrian facilities in the cemetery. And benches are in line with shift standards, but just something to think about. That's why I wanted to kind of bring it to the discussion today to really get my temperature check before I have them fill out an application.
you know, she had that list of all the things that she had visited and that didn't work out, but there's also the option of rose bush. I like I like the bench. I'm for the bench, don't get me wrong, but that's if it comes up again, there is the rose bush at Cirrhosis Park in that little rose garden. As you come in, you can dedicate roses. I know several roses. Well, I don't know the rose. I know of the people that died that are represented by different roses there, and everyone remembers it. It's kind of a personal thing with the town. And that, I mean, I don't know what it costs. It's less than that bench. I know that for a widow.
Are they labeled so you can identify which rose
I
represents?
think
who?
there is. It's not like a, and I might have that wrong just because I know the actual rose in the, you know, different parents, and I have a nephew with a rose there and different, you know. Anyway. Another option. We need to adjourn the meeting.
Does Bob have to hit the gavel?
Bob, wait, no.
Oh, I got.
There we go.
It didn't happen until now. I was hoping she had her mic turned off or tape recorder.
I
Oh.
apologize for being late. I went to the third floor of the courthouse. For some reason.